Good evening. I think we're ready to begin the meeting. Welcome to Blanc Township Board of Trustees meeting. Let's see here. Just get everything working. Good evening. Welcome to Blanc Board of Trustees meeting for Thursday, August 13th. If we can rise and pledge allegiance to the flag, we'll get started here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can you grab this, Robbie? It's Joe Massey. Okay, we might be having a problem with one of our board members We may have a problem with one of our board members logging in. We have Trustee Massey calling in, so we may be having him join us shortly. But with that, we'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask for an approval of the agenda and the consent agenda for this evening. One of our board members logging in. We have Trustee Massey calling in, so maybe having him join us shortly. Okay. Do you guys hear me twice there for a second? Okay, I think we eliminated that. We're having trouble for any of our attendees. Hopefully you're logging in on Zoom because for some reason the Facebook live feed isn't working this evening. The technology on our end is working fine, but there's some issue with Facebook with the connection or something. So anyways, that's what the issue is if you're trying to log in on Facebook. So anyways, was there a motion to approve the consent agenda and regular agenda? Ms. Lane?
I'm willing to make the motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the consent agenda and agenda as presented.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Okay. Ms. Lane?
All right. Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey? I thought I saw him.
He's on there. He's having some issues with the audio.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
You want me to put Mr. Massey down as yes?
Not yet.
We'll hold off on. We'll just leave him off that vote because he's still trying to log in, I believe. Okay. With that, we are going to, Mr. Guzak, you have your hand raised. I'm not sure. Okay, we got it taken care of.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
now I just lost my screen again. Shit. What the heck?
Okay, what I would ask at this time is that any of our participants, yes, Mr. Mansour.
Yes, thank you. Before we get into citizens' comments, Supervisor Bennett, while it's important for us to hear citizens' comments, a speaker at last meeting did not address her comments to the chairperson. It's your responsibility to hold speakers to those guidelines, so if you'd please remind everyone of them, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I will, and the same for board members too. Just a reminder that I'm sure Mr. Mansour would like to reiterate is that we want comments directed to the chair for whether it's citizen comments or other board members. Those need to be directed to me. With that, thank you, Mr. Mansour, and Mr. Beller, if you want to see if there's anybody that has public comment, and we ask you to keep it to 3 minutes or less. Is there anybody that would like to make public comment? Please raise their hand. Okay, go ahead. Okay, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Maria Hobson. I live at 8389 Parkside Drive. I just wrote something down here real quick, just a short one for tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. Mr. Chair, and I will address you. And then I would like to just add a couple of things at the end. But prior to this, this is what I wrote down to begin with. I would like to start this whole thing out over fresh. And first of all, I want to apologize to Mr. Chair and the rest of the board for being combative in the past. But I feel that these are very serious issues and they've just totally gotten out of hand. So I suppose at this point we just need to agree to disagree. I'm pleased that Trustee Mr. Ken Thomas made some attempts to halt the bickering at a meeting a few weeks ago. But at this point, I would just suggest that you put yourselves in the place of the upcoming board. It's not fair to the upcoming board for this board to make some decisions on the leadership that affect everybody, the residents, including yourselves. And it's also unfair to any potential candidate to continue with this process of trying to hire new leadership. There's no way really to find a qualified candidate in such a short time frame. So, why start interviewing people and why start something just to start it all over when the new board is in place? And then also please compensate the chief and the supervisor fairly and adequately until such a time a permanent replacement can be found. There's no need to fight. Just do what's best for the residents. All right, now here comes Mr. Chair. I am addressing you. I'm a resident of this community. I have now been totally disrespected by now, yes, 3 board members. I feel that that's very unfair to me. I live here like everybody else does. I feel that I've been, although upset about what this board did to a good man, Mr. Limita, I feel I've been upset. I feel I've been emotional, but I don't feel that I've done anything inappropriate. So if that's all you guys can do to me is laugh at me, call me names, text message one another. I'm sorry, to Mr. Chair. Board members last week were text messaging one another while they were laughing at me. And now I'm called on this. I'm not running for board. I'm not on the board. I'm sorry that I didn't follow proper procedure. But that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's just see if I think we mightn't be done with public comment. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised. Mr. Massey, do you have a point of clarification? You need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to say this. Listening to Mrs. Marie, I have to be very specific here.
Well, we asked, I know Mr. Mansour asked that the comments be directed to the chair, so I would ask that we not direct
I direct
comments.
my comments to the chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to say this. As long as we have been on Zoom, and as long as I have been a board member, I have never texted anyone during a board meeting. I have never reached out to someone making a public comment. I have never made a negative comment towards anyone. Now, if someone is claiming that a board member has disrespect he or she, I don't recall that. That's just a personal belief within that person. I don't recall a board member degrading or belittling anyone. And I surely can say, in any meeting that we have been on Zoom, I have never received a text from anyone. Never.
Okay.
So I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know who made it up. So it has to be made up. I can say this. I only have received one text, and that was when the former president, not the president, the former superintendent texted me. Okay. That's the only text I have ever received from any board member, anybody.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Massey. Sorry, we were having some feedback issues there somewhere. Okay. Mr. I see Ed as a guest here. Do you have your microphone on down there, Robbie?
Hello, are you there?
Yes, we're here.
Good evening, Eddard, 7212 Porter Road. I'd like to speak in regards to the township management. The emphasis seems to be on a short-term management basis, that we're not really dealing with a permanent manager. We always seem to be just the emphasis on short-term. We discussed at the July 7th meeting to start the process and seek candidates for a superintendent/manager or whatever we're going to do. See any of this happening? And it really, you know, we gotta move forward. I hear from people saying this is a long process. Even more the reason to keep the wheels moving if this is so-called long process, which I don't really think it is. This is not like the people have suggested in the past. We have a very good, capable HR department that could accomplish this. They're very good at it. They could do it. We didn't have this department in the past, and that happened to have happened on this board. We had an HR department happen. So it happened on your watch. We have an HR department, and that's great. We need to search for a candidate. We need to search for candidates. Whomever makes that final decision, which candidate. I ask you to keep this township moving. HR department and this board hired a Parks and Recreation director within roughly 5 weeks. HR can really move on this if you give them the direction. Go ahead. If we did that, when we discussed this back in July the 7th, maybe we'd be interviewing candidates today. Let's quit dragging our feet. Get this job done. And thank you for listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to make public comment? Anybody else wish to make public comment? We ask you to use the raise your hand feature. I think you probably can unmute yourself as well if that's not working. Okay, I don't see any more hands, so we are going to close public comment and bring it back to the board. Mr. Mansour? Need to unmute yourself, Mr. Mansour.
Supervisor Bennett, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of July 7th, July 9th, July 28th, and August 5th special meeting. But I haven't had a chance to review the executive session meetings for the 28th of July and August 5th.
Okay.
So I'd like a chance to do that, please.
Sure.
Support.
Okay, it's been a motion and support. Any discussion? Ms. Lane?
Unmute yourself.
Go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
All right, Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
Mr. Massey,
You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Massey.
Yes.
Mr. Guzak,
Yes.
Mr. Adkins,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And Mr. Thomas is still absent, sir.
We don't see him in the waiting room, so.
All right,
Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure.
Yep. Okay, the consent agenda items have been approved. Operational issues. Operational issue A, the board will consider a motion to approve the police command and sergeant's labor contracts. We do have Attorney Graves available for an executive session if we wish to go into that to discuss these, if you choose to, and then approve them after or whatever your wishes are. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have a question in regard to the labor contract,
Yes.
the police command.
Yes.
Is Attorney Gray? I guess this should be a question for Attorney Gray. Is it the right time for me to ask him a basic, simple question? It hasn't.
Is it with regard to specifics in the contract, or is it just general questions?
It's not specifics in the contract. It's a general question.
Sure, we can bring them on.
I'd like for you to bring
ADG.
them on, please, if you don't mind.
Try to click more.
I'm here.
Okay.
Attorney Graves, Joe Massey, Trustee Joe Massey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great. Attorney Graves, my question to you, you've had a lot of experience dealing with these kind of contracts, okay? So my question is, when we approve a contract, will that contract be free of mistakes?
I can't answer that question. I mean, a mistake is in the eye of the beholder.
Well, I mean, let me give you a more specific question. If a mistake is in the eyes of a beholder, so if you misspell a word, that's in the eyes of a beholder.
A typo or would remain in the contract, yes, but a typo does not change the meaning of the contract. Generally, there are cases where there could be misspellings, and both parties review labor contracts, both the union side and the company side, or I'm sorry, the township side. And our goal in a contract that is many pages long is to eliminate as many typos and corrections as we can. And we did clean up many of them along the way. Could there be a typo in there still? Yes.
Okay. So, getting more specific, if a sentence, a paragraph is written incorrectly, how is that normally rectified?
It wouldn't be well, there's a couple ways it would be rectified. Either it would be interpreted as the parties who bargained it intended it to be interpreted. If they agreed on that interpretation, the party disagreed on that interpretation, that would be a subject for the grievance arbitration procedure in the labor contract.
Well, the reason I'm curious about this, because any contracts that I've been involved in, basically at an elementary level, and when I mean at an elementary level, we went back, there was always a proofreader. When attorneys were involved, that was a proofreader. They had someone on both sides, proofreading the contract. Now, I don't know whether you ever experienced that or not. I've dealt with contracts that employed 5,000 people. So they always had proofreaders. I don't know what you guys do, but I'm just bringing this forward now.
Well, if I may weigh in, what we have before us this evening is a contract that the police and their union negotiators have agreed to. So if there's a typo in there or something that changes the meaning, they have seen it, and they've agreed that they're willing to move forward. Mr. Atkins?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to recommend the approval of the police command and sergeant's labor contract as
Okay.
negotiated.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Do you have a second, Mr. Guzak? You need to unmute yourself.
Because some of the things were changed and some of them weren't, so I would like to go through and make sure I understand what's in there, because there's a couple things that haven't been changed.
All right. Okay, Mr. Atkins made a motion. Is there a second or not? Okay,
If I might make a recommendation to the board.
Sure, go ahead, Attorney Graves.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Attorney Graves.
If I might make a recommendation to the board, if we were going to go through the contract line by line, or even address the issues where corrections were made between the last board meeting and this board meeting, or changes were made, I would recommend that we do that in executive session, which would be appropriate because we're talking about labor negotiations.
Okay. Well, I don't see a second for Mr. Atkins' motion. I would second it, but it doesn't look like we have any support. So, but let's go ahead and I'll second the motion, Mr. Atkins. Is there, Ms. Lane, you want to call for the vote?
Discussion?
Sure, go ahead with the discussion. Mr. Guzak?
Yes, I'd like to go in executive session just for a few minutes just to clear up a couple things, and then we can come back out and vote.
Okay. Mr. Mansour?
Yeah, so I just like to make a point here that, Treasurer Guzak has spent really a remarkable amount of time going through these contracts really line by line, and he's identified a number of inconsistencies and some other corrections to be made. So I'd like to give him the benefit of being able to go through and make sure that he's fully satisfied.
Okay, Ms. Lane?
All right, are we voting on Mr. Atkins' motion then, sir?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Massey?
You're muted, Mr. Massey. You need to unmute yourself. Okay, you did. Go ahead, Mr. Massey.
No.
Mr. Mansour?
No.
Mr. Guzak?
Oh, no, I just like to go through a couple items, so I'm going to have to be a no.
All right. Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Myself, I'll go with having to get things clarified before we finalize it, so I'll say no to get those clarified. Mr. Bennett?
Yes. Okay, so we will take this up in executive session. Ms. Lane?
Mr. Chair, could we, would it be agreeable to the board, if we're going to go into executive session, to take care of the other matters on the operational issues?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
handle those at the very end, so we can handle it.
Well, I would hope our board would concur that we may have another issue to go into executive session based on our discussion Tuesday, but so is everybody agreeable if we wait till the end of the meeting to do the executive session?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll put that at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, the board will discuss the water rate study. I saw that Mr. Potter actually re-emailed the study that was sent out earlier in the summer. I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to look at it, but we can put it back on the agenda if you need more time to look at it. Because I know it's, if some of you are just seeing it from Tuesday, you may need a little bit more time to look at it. Mr. Massey?
Yes. Mr. Chair, I need more time to look at it. Can I make a suggestion?
What's that?
Well, I have to laugh about this suggestion.
Okay.
When someone comes before the board to talk about water rates, it is sort of ambiguous, unclear what they really mean. It's like more rambling going on than actually informing the board about given rates.
I want to be clear. They asked me what specifically we wanted to know, and I said just come prepared to talk about the water rate study. So I didn't give them any clear direction. So if they didn't come here with a direction, that's why. So it's,
I'm not speaking of you.
I know, but I'm just saying that they asked me what specifically, and I said just be prepared and have the water rate study. So if there's some specific things we want to ask them about, we can ask them, and we'll make sure they're prepared to present on that particular topic. Because as you know, water and waste is a huge area, and there's lots of different avenues we could go down for any discussion. But I would say let's give everybody a chance to look at the study, and we can bring it up next month. And in the meantime, if anybody has any specifics with regard to the study as far as questions or things that they would like to have presented, please forward those to me, and we'll make sure that they're prepared to present on those. Would that work, Mr. Massey?
Well, one thing, can I ask you, do you mind correcting something?
What's that?
When you said next month, we cannot take this issue up the last
Sure.
meeting of
Okay.
the month?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't know if that'd be enough time for everybody to go through the study, but if it is, then I would say email me your questions or concerns before that, and we'll put them on the agenda and have a presentation based on what questions people have. Okay, Mr. Mansour?
Just quickly, I mean, the board here, and I will follow this up with a specific email, but the board has asked to have the initial assumptions and rate study that we received back in the, I think it was August timeframe, with the, the rate study and the assumptions, and then comparison with where we are today to understand what new information is building into it. Okay. So again, I'll follow that up, but that was, I think, one of the things we were looking for out of the presentation. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we'll look at doing that the fourth Tuesday of this month. Okay, we discussed on Tuesday the resolution that with regard to the truth in taxation that we need to move forward on, that will allow us to publish the public hearing for next month. And contained in the packet was the resolution. The board will consider, Mr. Mansour?
Yeah, unless you want to go further, I'm ready to make a motion for this resolution.
Go right ahead.
So I'd like to propose the authorized levy of 6.8738 mills for tax year 2020 with the breakdown shown on the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair. For support.
Okay. It's a resolution, and Mr. Laddie?
Mr. Chair, and I'm assuming that, again, those rates are displayed on the agenda and they've been properly adopted into the resolution. But this resolution will result then in the setting of a public hearing, probably at our September meeting, which will contain those millage rates. I just want to understand that you're going to get another bite at this. In fact, you're going to have a specific resolution that identifies millage rates after the public hearing next month.
Right. So we will actually have Ms. Salvati, our Director of Assessing, available to answer questions with regard to these as well at that public hearing. Okay, Ms. Lane?
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. Myself, yes, and Mr. Bennett?
Yes. Okay, thank you. The board will consider a motion to approve a payment of $14,069 to ETNA Supply for the annual Census R&I meter reading system hosting fee. And we learned on Tuesday, we didn't recall, this is basically the software that allows us to collect meter readings remotely. And it's an annual fee. I believe, as pointed out, it went up about 3% from last year. Any discussion? Mr. Mansour?
So I'll make that motion to approve the payment to ETNA in the amount of $14,069.
Okay, is there support?
Oh, one more question.
Sure.
On that, we do have a line item in our budget that ties to this, correct? Maybe that's during discussion. But okay, let's go with this.
Okay.
Support with a question.
Okay. Go ahead with your question. I think Mr. Sears is on the line, so we can bring him on.
Yeah, so the question is, some of these recurring fees, like this one, for instance, I know that there's maintenance and other things that go into these annual costs, but have we ever researched any other communities or any ability to create some sort of program or software and we manage it internally without annual fee, or is that just, or are we just tied to that because of their system forever?
We're tied to that because of the meter reading system we have. Because this is the software, it's proprietary software for census meters, which are the meters we utilize. So there's no other way for us to build any kind of software to collect that data because it's proprietary to their equipment.
Okay.
Mr.
We
Sears,
could look at other equipment in the future if we ever have a major change-out program. And maybe, other programs for different meter companies would be cheaper, but I can't be sure about that.
Mr. Sears, just to follow up on Mr. Atkins' question, though, do we ever check with other communities that are using the same equipment to see if what they're charging us is similar to what they're being charged, per unit?
I haven't, because the fees are based on the size of the community,
Okay,
and to find communities that exactly like ours,
okay.
it's
Would be-
difficult. But I can certainly do a study of that nature.
Yeah, I was just curious if it, it's probably like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but if there's some kind of groups or something online that discuss those kind of things. But I saw Mr. Mansour's hand up, and then we'll go back to Mr. Massey.
Chairman to Director Sears, we do have a line item in our budget to cover this, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Director Sears. Director Sears, does this fee include updates?
Yes, absolutely. We get updates almost monthly, if not more frequently.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion that was seconded. Ms. Lane?
Mr. Massey,
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Guzak,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Item E, the board will consider a resolution to add 21 streetlights to our standard lighting contract with Consumers Energy and authorize the township supervisor to execute all related contracts and agreements. Ms. Lane?
I so move because those are LED lights for the Dort extension and the roundabouts associated with it.
Okay.
Support.
Mr. Mansour supports. Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Does anyone have the knowledge of you, Mr. Sears, have some expertise in that this will give adequate lighting to Dort Highway in those areas where the lights will be erected?
Mr. Sears?
I can speak to that. Roe and the Road Commission studied this, and they do believe that it will give adequate lighting along the entire extension. We did have options to light only the corridor near Baldwin Road, but we did decide to put more in, especially around the roundabouts. So we believe we matched the lighting at our existing roundabout at Hill and Belsey, and which is sufficient. So we believe this will work out fine for us.
Go ahead, Mr. Massey.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for you. Since we are on this topic talking about lighting in the extension of Dort Highway, in the future, say within the next 2 meetings, could you have row engineering to come in and give us an update on the work that they're currently doing on the extension?
Probably be better for the road commission actually to come in and give us an update, right, Mr. Sears?
Yeah, we can probably get a representative on the phone. We can ask for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But when would you how long does it take to make that possible?
Maybe we can have something by September, that first meeting, the committee of the whole, possibly. It all depends on their schedule, but they're usually pretty accommodating to us.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, any further discussion on the lighting for the Dort Highway extension? Ms. Lane?
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Guzak,
Yes.
Mr. Massey,
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Item F, the board will consider a motion for approval to authorize the purchase of the Hearst extrication tools in the amount of $58,000 and for the supervisor to sign all purchase and warranty contracts. We discussed this at Tuesday's committee of the whole meeting and the benefit of this equipment over other equipment. Mr. Mansour?
Yeah, so I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, is there support by Mr. Atkins? Any further discussion? Ms. Lane?
Okay. Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Guzak,
Yes.
Mr. Massey,
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item G, I don't know if that's something that you wanted to go on executive committee for or not. I know on Tuesday it was suggested we do that.
Yeah,
I
I
would
think it,
suggest, Mr. Chair, we do. with the other contract matters. Get it
Is
done.
that the consensus? Okay, we'll do that with the executive committee. Item H, the board will consider a resolution to approve the litigation policy.
So moved, Mr. Chair. Support.
Okay, motion support. Some discussion on it. I have some concerns. I know the material information, that it states in the policy that, I think material information gives some wiggle room that not every complaint needs to be brought before the board, because otherwise I think we're going to be spending a lot of time doing that. But I think our current policy sufficiently does that. And the other concern I have is that in the policy is the mention of workers' comp situations. I didn't notice that till today, but I'm not sure that we wanted to bring up worker comp litigation to the board. I believe it could be a violation of some things. So I'm not going to go along with it at this time. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, for some unknown reason, I guess you just have said all along what you believe in, and I'm glad that you made that statement, a powerful statement, that you don't believe everything should be brought to the board. It should be done behind closed doors. You make the decision and the board is left in the dark. Thank you for saying that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Massey, Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr. Mansour.
If I could, Supervisor Bennett, to address the concern you have about workers' compensation issues, maybe Attorney Laddie can, or Attorney Graves,
Right.
maybe can comment on that situation.
Sure, that'd be helpful. Mr. Laddie, I know you helped draft this or drafted it.
Did I have the workers' compensation information for the board, and that could be conducted in a closed session. It's attorney-client communication. One of my communities, one of the biggest lawsuits in the last, I want to say 16 years, involved the workers' comp claim. It involved their participation in discovery as individuals. It also involved their contribution to a resolution. And I believe that it is absolutely within the necessary purview of the board to consider significant workers' compensation matters. There may be items or cases that don't involve a significant amount of money, and that probably don't involve a significant amount of input from the board at any point in time. And my goal is not necessarily to have the board spend a lot of time considering those matters, but again, just based on what happened in my experience recently, they can be significant and they can be important to a board.
So, with regard to the Mr. Laddie, with regard to the workers' comp situation, do you believe the policy states that any workers' comp situation needs to come to the board, or only those that are going to be going to litigation?
I think only those that are going to involve litigation.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for the clarification then. Okay, Ms. Lane.
All right. Mr. Guzak,
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Massey,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
No.
So,
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the board will consider a motion for approval for the purchase of a 2021 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD work truck from My Deal, which is a Michigan government bid site. Contact, and it has the number there, through Berger Chevrolet for the price of $30,694, and plow and accessory fittings through My Deal contract also through NAPIDE for $9,901.15. The Parks and Recreation millage funds will be used for the purchase.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mr.
Support.
Atkins, supported by Mr. Mansour. Any discussion? We talked about this on Tuesday, and it'll be used out at the park for a number of repairs and what have you.
Mr.
And I did want to address Mr. Massey's concern. I pulled out the policy today for the purchasing policy. And regarding the disposal or sale of township property or goods, I'll just read this and then tell you what transpired here regarding this. But whenever any township property, real or personal, is no longer needed for a public purpose, department director shall submit a list of all items and their approximate current value to the township superintendent. The superintendent shall determine whether any of the items may be offered for sale or utilized by another department, commission, or governmental body. Items may be offered for sale to the general public at auction or by competitive sealed bid. All property sold must have an asset disposal form completed and turned into the finance department. So in discussing this here at the township, was that unfortunately, while an email went out to everybody, which I would have been informed as well, it didn't go to the board. However, as you see in the policy, the superintendent in the past has been able to approve those, and the finance department basically issues or gets an asset disposal form, and it goes to them. But with the fire truck, that did come before the board. But the superintendent, being that he wasn't in place, we probably need to revise the policy and state either that it comes to me or it comes to the board if we're going to be disposing of any equipment. But I'm not sure if we want to change that policy or look at it for the next meeting and change some language, or how we want to handle that. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, as working with Chief Burdett, he always brought dispositions of assets to the board, small, big, or indifferent. And when you mentioned just a fire truck, he bought all of the vehicles that were being put on the auction block or being put on the block to be sold. And I believe Chief Wiles has done the same, to my knowledge. And that was the practice in the township. So because it gets into a situation where adequate auction, how much is the vehicle worth?
Well, let's do this. If you don't mind, I will forward the purchasing policy to our board members. You can take a look at the language for disposal of equipment, and if we choose to change how that reporting process works, let's discuss. Email me your suggested changes, or maybe email myself and Mr. Laddie, and we can discuss at the next meeting if we want to change or if we need to change the language in that policy.
So you'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting?
If you guys send me some suggestions, we can add those and look at those at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will send out the policy to everyone. Mr. Atkins, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, through you, Chair. This is Patrick on?
Yeah, we can bring him on. Mr. Lehman, or I'm sorry, Mr. Linehan.
Trustee Atkins.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, question for you. It's exciting. This is a big purchase for our new Parks and Rec here. Have there been any? Will this cover any branding, or if you want to put any logo or decal on this truck to make it pop, or?
Yeah. So the GB Parks logo that we've come up with is going to go on this vehicle, and when we get them ordered, we're going to brand our current vehicles too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so there was a motion that was supported, I believe. Any further discussion? Ms. Lane?
Okay, Mr. Guzak,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Massey,
You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Massey.
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We can ask if there's any reports that we want to give. I think Mr. Mansour is probably the only one that has a committee that's meeting at this point. So,
Yep.
Mr. Mansour.
So yeah, just really quickly, the planning commission did have actually a special meeting, and we're pretty much have a draft of the master plan together. There were some members of the planning commission that wanted to make some final tweaks before they brought it to the full planning commission, which would give its approval on the draft, which would then come to the township board. So I don't want to be specific on put a stake in the ground and be completely held to it, but based on the comments that I heard during the meeting, it looks like we can have those wrapped up and probably be submitting the draft language to the board at the beginning of September. And again, this is only the beginning of the process. Once the board accepts it, then it goes into a public hearing phase where there's, I think it's, I recall 63 days or something like that. We'll have a couple of town hall open houses done. Obviously, the COVID is going to we have to respect that. But anyway, I just want to let you know that we're pretty close on this, and the board should expect to see the draft for their review and approval within the next few weeks here, a couple of 2-3 weeks.
Mr. Mansour, I just wanted to share with you that I have heard from one resident. I've tried to ask her to contact me by phone, but I did receive a message from her that she's concerned that we move forward on this master plan without. Her concern is doing all this digitally, or doing it with online meetings as opposed to face to face. And this particular resident wanted to voice her concern that she believes that we need to hold off until the time when we can do it in face-to-face meetings. So I just wanted to bring that up to you, that if that comes up in discussion, I have heard that from one resident. So
thank you.
Ms. Lane, anything on elections that you want to tell us?
No, we're still waiting for the Board of Canvassers to certify all the elections, but we did have, we issued 9,300 absentee ballots, and we got 80% of them back. But we've also, in the last few days, received a lot of them that were late, that were held up in the mail. So I will be always encouraging the voters for November to use our outside tan mailbox so that they know that their application for an absentee ballot and their ballot gets here to the township and can be adequately counted.
Okay. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question for Clerk Lane.
Go ahead.
Clerk Lane indicated that she have received some ballots after past the voting date that were held up in the mail.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know this is something new, Clerk Lane, but I would like for you to weigh in on telling us what to expect in the future. I know you may not have all the answers, but you have some thoughts about it because you've been a clerk for many, many years and you know the ins and outs of this business. The COVID-19 has given us a lot to think about going forward. But can you expound on how would you, what you guys are talking about behind the scene when someone mail a ballot adequate time to get to your location, which is the township, and it's not received until everything has been over? How do you think it should be addressed?
For most of people that receive absentee ballots, they are in the township somewhere, And therefore, I would instruct anybody within driving distance of the township hall to either bring their ballot back to the township hall. We're open from 8 to 5 and everyone is using a mask, or to use the drop box outside. That's the only way we can guarantee that your ballot gets here. And we were spending weeks with the post office trying to get them to find ballots that they had lost, and they were of no success. So that's the one link in an absentee ballot.
That you can remove is by dropping it off instead of mailing it.
Absolutely.
Mr. Massey, you need to unmute your line if you want to speak.
Okay. Clerk Lane, this
Yes.
question is directly at you.
Certainly.
So you're telling me I would have got 2,000 more votes if you would have received those ballots in adequate time?
No, sir, we didn't have that. We didn't have 2,000, but we had more than 70 ballots come in late. So I'm sorry. They're going to stay sealed for the record, and nobody will know how they voted. And as I said, the Board of Canvassers are working diligently at the county building trying to get the elections certified. So hopefully by the beginning of next week we'll have it. I will let everybody know that those people that are on our absentee ballot list will receive their application for an absentee ballot, the ones that are on the township's permanent list, around the early part of September. If you don't get it by early, mid-September, let us know so that we make sure that you have an application, and the ballots will be out in early October. So those are the timelines.
Okay.
Matt, Clerk Lane,
Yes, sir?
a question based on those that came in late. How many days were those ballots running around in the post office or in the trunk of somebody's car?
I haven't that kind of investigation. We're interested in getting the August election certified by the county, and that's where our priorities are right now, and getting ready to gear up. So if you want that information, I'm going to have to look at it more closely.
Yeah, I would like to get that information.
Okay.
Mr. Guzak, anything from the treasurer's office?
No, nothing to report here. It's just that, we're open at the Dropbox as well as through the internet if they want to charge it online, or they can come in if they have a mask on. So.
And we have the drive-up window as well.
And a drive-up window, yes, you're correct.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I would like to direct this question to you and the treasurer, Mr. Earl. Can you give us some update on how the new investment company is working out for us?
Mr. Guzak?
You've received the monthly statements, and you're probably tomorrow or the next day you'll see the most current statement. So you received every monthly statement, and it shows all the activity. Have you been receiving it? I mean, it's been mailed out to you. You have received it, right, Joe?
Yes, but I was thinking from your perspective. Is good, bad, or indifferent, or just mediocre?
Well, it's hard to tell at this point. I mean, everything is invested. There's stuff out there 3 years, and only time will tell on that if we need those funds. So we've got funds that are out there 3 years now. They're at like 0.10, but the rate's not always the telltale. The rates, their other variable rates are a little bit higher than some of the other ones. So at least on the variable side, it's better. But I'm not sure on the long-term stuff. Time will only tell.
Thank you.
I just want to report that Consumers Energy is working hard along the Dork Highway extension and across several of our streets. Reed Road is closed for 4 or 5 days. We will be. I would ask our residents to keep posted to our social media, our website, and Nextdoor, because there will be some phases later in the next month or two that they will be doing some testing, and you may hear some loud sounds, and we'll try to notify everybody several different ways prior to those actually taking place. But just so nobody's alarmed when those tests occur. But and just a reminder, the many people think that the Dort Highway extension has started down by Baldwin Road, and actually the portion that they're working on is between basically I-75 and Cook Road right now. Next fall we'll start the construction between Cook Road and Baldwin Road. But everything you see south of Cook Road down to Baldwin right now is Consumers Energy. So we're hearing that, I know we're asking for an update at one of our upcoming meetings. Maybe we'll try and even get some photographs of what's going on with the roundabouts that are being built right now on Cook and I-75. So, okay, Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Those, according to what you just said, those underground pipes is done by consumer?
Yes.
Okay.
We will have sewer and such going into the ground in the fall, actually along some of that same corridor. So we're going to try and get our utilities in this fall after Consumers is done, but prior to the road construction next spring. So you'll see some changing of the guard in terms of who's working in that area come this fall, hopefully. Just an update too, we're on the Baldwin Road corridor. We're working hard with the county road commission as well as county planning to put together the grant application. We've gotten a number of letters of support from local businesses in that area as far as what it would mean to economic development and job creation in that area. We're putting that together along with a lot of detailed information. Row Engineering is helping us with the proposed budget for it. But we're looking at, like I said before, probably between a $4 million and $5 million project that we're asking for a grant to fund. So we're going to try and get that submitted next week, and so we're working hard on all the details for that. Okay. I think with that, we're probably, I don't know, Attorney Laddie, anything to report to the board this time?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, I guess we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Laddie, how would you like that to be framed?
Well, two ways. I think we're going to discuss some pending labor negotiations, and so I think that's an eligible criterion to go into executive session. And then also, if you want to handle these votes separately, you could do that, or if you want, you can put them together. The other reason would be to go into to consider a written attorney opinion authored by me. So, do you want them separate or do you want them together?
Separate.
Okay. Why don't you take the labor negotiation first? And by the way, in our session, why don't you address that issue first, just out of convenience for Attorney Graves?
Right. Go ahead, Mr. Guzak, if you want to make that motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we go into exec to discuss the letter and also the police contracts.
Second.
The letter, I'm not sure I understood.
Yeah.
Mr. Laddie's letter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Letter opinion.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
You're doing them together?
Well, they should be separate. But do we have to come back out to go if we do it separate?
It's just
No.
a matter of how we make the motion. Your motion had them both together, which is fine. I believe it was seconded, so.
That's fine.
I mean, we're fine. Ms. Lane?
Myself, yes. Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes. I would just want to let the public know at this time, we are going to go into executive session. If you're not familiar with that term, it's where the board will discuss some items in private and for negotiation purposes, and we will return hopefully back into open session when we're done. I'm not sure of the time frame of that, but I would ask that our members of our board bear with us as we switch everybody into a private room. And Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, is Chief Wise available?
He is on vacation, so no, he is not available this evening.
Who is filling in for him, may I ask? I mean, regarding the contract.
I don't think.
We don't. We have Attorney Graves here, so
That should be sufficient.
yeah. Okay. So, anyways, we're going to go into executive session. Give us just a few moments to get everybody switched over. Mr. Beller, are you able to do that? Or? Okay. So if we click on breakout rooms. The bottom line is that the discussion that we had with regard to the police contracts, whether it was the actuarial work or not, it doesn't matter whether or not it was used. It was something that both the union and the township said, yes, we can do those and take a look at. So whether or not they were ultimately used, that's part of the negotiation. And part of our current contract is that we're going to be looking at those items over the course of the next year. So I believe that those will come into play. Ms. Lane?
For clarification, are we saying that the Bogman firm will conclude or will do the POAM contract and the finishing of any portions of the MERS and everything else that are still outstanding, Mr. Mansour?
The signing of the agreements as they exist for sergeants, for executive command, and then for POAM, with apparently the MERS pieces left open.
With that they will have to settle?
We have no idea who this Williams firm is. We have no idea of, what their charges are. I remember when we hired Bodman, that was a big concern, looking at what their rates were. We interviewed them, and to hire a law firm without sight unseen, I'm not sure how or why we do that. Mr. Laddie?
Is this, would the motion regarding the Williams firm to seek a proposal from them? I mean,
that was not the motion. The motion was to hire them. Mr. Massey?
Since we have people listening, can we speak about the Bodman's contract?
I'm not prepared to talk about it. And
No, I don't think so.
So what?
I do not have it in front of me right now to discuss it.
Can we speak about the Bodman's contract?
No, I don't think so.
All I'm saying is I don't have a copy of it in front of me.
Well, you know this. You don't need a copy in front of you.
Okay, well, you always said, can we discuss it? I'm just telling you, I don't have a copy to discuss the particulars of it. Mr. Atkins?
I'd like to also see a total of where we are with that law firm from start to finish on the police negotiations. Total in terms of dollar amount.
We can do that.
Yeah, so.
It's not a problem. Okay, Mr. Mansour?
Yeah, so it's a good point that was brought up. I think by Attorney Laddie. So let me amend my motion. See if it's agreeable to Mr. Massey, I think, who seconded it. So again, the first part of it's the same, to conclude, to have the Bodman attorney law firm conclude our police contracts, but then seek a proposal for new labor counsel, and specifically include the Williams law firm. They are local. They've represented the Flint, Genesee County municipalities and for many years, and to consider them as a replacement as a new labor attorney.
Second.
Yeah, I think we're rushing to something and making a rash decision. I'm wondering if it's payback for the written opinion that said that the board should not be involved in hiring of the parks director, but we'll see. But I'm against changing law firm and sight unseen.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Ms. Lane.
All right. Mr. Massey,
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Guzak,
No.
um,
Who's next?
I'm willing to look at some of this, but not tonight. So I'll say no. And Mr. Chair,
No.
Motion does not pass.
Okay.
we,
A motion to adjourn?
uh, I'll make the motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll support it.
All right. Mr. Massey,
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Guzak,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Right.